As she gathers her supplies to leave, she pauses at the door and looks back at AZUBAH, nursing her son in the dim lamplight. "Guard that boy," she whispers. "Guard him with everything you have." Then she's gone, and AZUBAH is alone with her child and a prayer that has become a blade. AZUBAH names her son Jerem in a formal ceremony so small it barely qualifies as ceremony at all. A single priest, 2 witnesses, no feast, no celebration. Jehoshaphat sends his regrets, matters of state, and a modest gift of silver coins. The Queen Mother does not send regrets, she simply doesn't come. But 3 days later, she arrives at AZUBAH's chamber unannounced, carrying a carved wooden box inlaid with ivory. 2 servants follow, bearing more gifts, fine linens, jars of oil, a tiny robe embroidered with gold thread. AZUBAH is nursing Jerem when they enter. She covers herself quickly, stands, bows as deeply as she can while holding an infant. The Queen Mother's smile is thin and practiced. A grandmother must honor her grandson no matter the circumstances of his birth. She sets the box on the table, opens it with deliberate care. Inside, nestled in silk, is an amulet, a small carved figure, smooth and ancient-looking, a woman with exaggerated curves, arms raised, a shur for the child's protection. The Queen Mother says, "It has been in our family for generations. My mother gave it to me when Jehoshaphat was born. It has kept him safe through war, sickness, intrigue." She lifts it out, holds it toward Oba. "Now I pass it to you, for Jerem." The room goes silent. Even the servants seem to hold their breath. Oba looks at the amulet. It's beautiful in its way, smooth, well-made, worth more than anything she owns, and absolutely forbidden. She thinks of the commandments her father taught her from childhood. "You shall have no other gods before me, you shall not make for yourself an idol." She thinks of Jehoshaphat's reforms, the high places torn down, the Asher poles chopped into firewood. She thinks of the prophet's words, "The forgotten one will mother the righteous." How can she mother righteousness while clutching an idol? "My lady," AZUBAH says quietly, "I am grateful for your kindness, but I cannot accept this." The Queen Mother's smile freezes. "I'm sorry. The amulet, I cannot hang it over my son's cradle. I cannot keep it in my home." Orba's voice is steady, though her hands tremble. "The Lord commands us to worship him alone. No other gods, no carved images." "This isn't worship," the Queen Mother says, her voice dropping to something dangerous. "It's tradition, protection, wisdom passed down through generations of women who kept their children alive in a world full of threats. Then they trusted the wrong protector." The words fall like stones into water. The ripples spread. The Queen Mother sets the amulet back in the box with exaggerated care, closes the lid. Her face is a mask now, no more pretense of warmth. "You are a foolish girl. You understand nothing of how this world works." "I understand," AZUBAH says, and her voice is stronger now, "that I will raise my son to know only one God. Not many, not a carefully balanced collection, one." The Queen Mother's eyes narrow. "Your husband is king because he learned to navigate between the old ways and the new, between the temple and the palace, between purity and pragmatism. You would do well to teach your son the same wisdom. Jehoshaphat learned to navigate." AZUBAH agrees. But what did he lose in the process? For a long moment, the Queen Mother simply stares. Then she picks up the box, tucks it under her arm, and turns to leave. At the door, she pauses. "You've just made a very costly choice," she says. "I hope your son appreciates it." The door closes. The servants who witnessed everything exchange nervous glances and hurry out after her. AZUBAH sinks onto her bed, Jerem still in her arms. Her whole body shakes now. Not from fear, from the sheer audacity of what she's done. Refusing the Queen Mother is unthinkable. Rejecting her protection, her wisdom, her gifts. It's a declaration of independence, of defiance. In the intricate web of palace relationships, AZUBAH has just cut herself loose. Within 3 days, the consequences begin. Her servants are reassigned. One morning she wakes to find her chamber attended by strangers, young, inexperienced girls who don't know how to help with a newborn, who look at her with suspicion and fear. Her regular attendants, the ones who'd been kind, are simply gone. Then her rooms are changed. A steward arrives with orders. The Queen Mother has decided AZUBAH's current chambers are needed for visiting dignitaries. She's being moved to a smaller apartment in the eastern wing, the oldest, coldest part of the palace. The rooms reserved for minor relatives and forgotten concubines. AZUBAH packs her few possessions in silence. Jerem sleeps in a sling against her chest. No one offers to help. The servants who carry her things won't meet her eyes. The new chamber is indeed smaller. A single window, narrow and high. A bed, a table, 2 chairs. The walls are bare stone, unplastered. In winter, it will be freezing. But when Oba sets down her bundle and looks around, she sees something the servants don't notice. Carved into the windowsill, hidden in shadow, are words in ancient Hebrew script. Teach them to your children. Clears throat when you sit at home, and when you walk along the road. Deuteronomy 6. She runs her fingers over the letters. They're deep, deliberately carved. Someone lived here before. Someone who faced the same battle. Someone who left a message for whoever came next. AZUBAH closes her eyes, and for the first time since refusing the amulet, she feels something other than fear. She feels seen. That night she begins to write. She has parchment, a precious gift from her father before he died. Too valuable to use for anything trivial. She saved it for years, waiting for something important enough. This is important enough. By lamplight, while Jerem sleeps in his cradle, AZUBAH writes. She writes the Shema here. O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. She writes the commandments. She writes the stories her father told her. Abraham and the covenant, Moses and the deliverance, David and the giant. She writes prayers, warnings, promises. This is for Jerem, in case she is silenced, in case the palace finds a way to separate them, in case he grows up and forgets where he came from, who he is, whose he is. She writes until her hand cramps, until the lamp burns low, until dawn light creeps through the narrow window, and when she finally sleeps, she dreams of her father. He's standing in a field of wheat, smiling, and he says, "The seed goes into the ground in darkness, daughter." That's when the real work begins. The years pass, not quickly, not easily. AZUBAH is excluded from state ceremonies. When foreign dignitaries visit, she's not presented. When the palace celebrates festivals, she's invited to stand in the back, silent and invisible. Jehoshaphat visits perhaps once a month, usually when duty requires him to check on his younger son's progress. The visits are brief, cordial, empty. But Jerem grows and AZUBAH teaches him. Every morning she recites the Shema with him. Every evening she tells him stories. When he's old enough to walk, she takes him to the narrow window and points out over Jerusalem. And see that, that's the temple. That's where the true God dwells. Not in carved images, not in foreign altars. There when he asks why they live in the small cold rooms while his half-brothers have grand apartments, she tells him the truth. Because your mother refused to bow to false gods. And some people punish faithfulness. Why, he asks, why did? Because faithfulness is inconvenient. It demands something of you. It won't bend or compromise. And powerful people don't like things they can't control. Jerem is 4 years old when he first asks the question that will haunt AZUBAH for the rest of her life. Does father love me? They're sitting on the floor of their chamber and AZUBAH is teaching him to form Hebrew letters with a stick in a tray of sand. She freezes mid-stroke. Your father is a good king, she says carefully. He has many responsibilities, many sons to think about. But does he love me? She pulls him into her lap, holds him close. I love you. The Lord loves you, and that is enough. But even as she says it, she wonders if it's true. If love from the forgotten is enough to sustain a child in a palace built on status and power. One afternoon when Joram is supposed to be napping, AZUBAH finds him gone. Panic seizes her. She searches their rooms, the corridor, the courtyard, and finally finds him in the main palace garden, standing at the edge of a group of children, royal children, his half-brothers and their friends. A priest is with them, not one of the temple priests, but a man in foreign robes, with painted eyes and jewelry that clinks when he moves. A Baal priest hired by someone in the palace to tutor the royal children in wisdom. AZUBAH's blood runs cold. The priest is telling a story about Baal defeating the sea god Yam. The children listen, rapt, and Jerem, her Jerem, stands at the edge of the group, eyes wide, drinking it in. She watches from behind a column, watches the priest's hands gesture dramatically, watches the children laugh at the god's exploits, watches Jerem lean in closer, desperate to be included, and she understands this is the battle. Not in her chamber, not in her isolation. Here in the garden, in the stories other people tell her son when she's not looking, she doesn't interrupt, doesn't make a scene. She waits until the lesson ends, until Joram wanders back toward their wing. And then she steps out from the shadows. Joram, he startles, looks guilty. Mother, I was just come with me. Clears throat. She leads him back to their chamber, sits him on the bed, kneels in front of him, so their eyes are level. What did the priest teach you today? She asks. Jerem hesitates. Stories about the gods. Baal is very strong. He defeated Jerem. Her voice is gentle but firm. Listen to me. There is only one God. Not many gods fighting each other like men in a marketplace. One God, the God who made heaven and earth, the God who delivered our people from Egypt, the God whose name is too holy to speak carelessly. But the other children will learn what their parents teach them, and you will learn what I teach you. Why are we different? His voice cracks. He's 4 years old and already he feels the weight of it, the loneliness of faithfulness. AZUBAH cups his face in her hands because the Lord has called us to be different, not better, not prouder, just separate, set apart. Holy, I don't want to be set apart, he whispers. I want to be like everyone else. Her heart breaks, but she doesn't let him see it. I know, she says, but you're not like everyone else. Your Jerem Yahweh is exalted and you will live up to your name, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when you're standing alone. That night she makes a decision that will cost her everything. She will teach Jerem herself, every day, every story, every commandment. She will build a wall of words around his heart so high and so strong that the palace's whispers can't breach it. Even if it means total isolation, even if it means they're both forgotten, even if Jehoshaphat never acknowledges them again. She lights a lamp, opens her scroll, and begins to teach her son what it means to belong to the one true God in a palace full of compromise. Outside, the Baal priest's laughter echoes through the gardens. But inside, in a small, cold room in the eastern wing, a mother whispers promises over her son that will outlast all the noise. The years blur together in a rhythm of isolation and instruction. Jerem grows from a curious child into a serious boy, then into a young man with his father's dark eyes and his mother's quiet intensity. He's 12 now, tall for his age, and carries himself with a careful dignity that makes Oba's heart ache. He's learned to be invisible, just like her. But invisibility only protects you until someone decides you're inconvenient. The announcement comes during a public banquet celebrating a treaty with Site. AZUBAH isn't invited, of course, but she hears about it the next morning from a servant who takes pity on her. The girl slips into AZUBAH's chamber with bread and news, both stale but necessary. They've arranged a marriage, the girl whispers, glancing over her shoulder. For Prince Jerem Abba's hands go still over the scroll she's been copying. What? The king announced it last night. A political alliance. The bride is, the servant swallows hard, Eliah, daughter of King Ahab and Queen Jezebel. The scroll falls from AZUBAH's hands. Jezebel, the woman who slaughtered prophets, who turned Israel from the covenant, who fed her people to Baal's altars and laughed while doing it. And now her daughter is being bound to Jerem when AZUBAH manages to ask. 6 months after the harvest, the servant leaves. AZUBAH sits frozen, staring at nothing. This is how they do it. Not with swords or decrees, with marriages, with alliances, with the slow, methodical corruption of bloodlines and beliefs. Jehoshaphat is securing peace with the northern kingdom. Yes, but he's doing it by tying his son, her son, to the house of Baal itself. She doesn't eat that day, can't. The bread sits untouched on her table while she paces her small chamber like a caged animal. That evening, there's a formal reception to introduce Ophelia to the court. AZUBAH watches from her window as the procession arrives. Horses, guards, servants carrying chests of gifts, and in the center riding a white mare, a young woman in purple and gold, Ophelia. Even from a distance, AZUBAH can see she's beautiful, poised, confident, everything a queen should be. Her hair is braided with jewels, her robes shimmer with Phoenician dyes. She rides like someone who's never doubted her right to rule. The courtyard erupts in applause. Jehoshaphat himself comes down to greet her, and somewhere in that crowd, AZUBAH scans desperately until she finds him. Jerem stands pale and rigid, watching the woman who will become his wife. Their eyes meet across the distance. Mother and son too far to speak. But she sees everything she needs to see in his face. Confusion, fear, a desperate, silent question. Mother, what do I do? And she has no answer. That night, she does something she's never done before. She requests an audience with Jehoshaphat. The steward who delivers her message returns an hour later looking uncomfortable. The king says he is occupied with matters of state. Perhaps another time, tell him it's about our son. He says the matter is already decided. AZUBAH's jaw tightens. Tell him I will wait outside his chamber until he sees me. The steward looks horrified. My lady, I will wait. She does. For 3 hours, she stands in the corridor outside Jehoshaphat's private apartments while guards shift uncomfortably and courtiers whisper as they pass. Her feet ache. Her back screams, but she doesn't move. Finally, near midnight, the door opens. Jehoshaphat looks older than she remembers, grayer, more tired. He doesn't invite her in, just stands in the doorway, one hand on the frame. AZUBAH, my lord, you wanted to speak about Jerem. You're binding him to the house of Baal. The words come out harder than she intended. Jezebel's daughter, Ahab's heir, you're tying our son to everything you spent your reign fighting against. Jehoshaphat's eyes flash. I'm securing peace. Israel and Judah have been at each other's throats for generations. This marriage ends that. It protects our people. It corrupts our son. It makes him powerful, connected. Athaliah brings wealth, alliances, influence. She brings Baal-oba, interrupts. She brings everything her mother taught her. You know what Jezebel did to Israel. You know how she hunted the prophets, how she turned the people. Athaliah is not her mother, isn't she? AZUBAH steps closer. Have you spoken to her? Have you asked what gods she worships? Or did you simply sign the treaty and assume the best? Jehoshaphat's face hardens. I have done what kings do. I have chosen the path that protects the most people. You wouldn't understand. You've spent Jerem's entire life hiding in that chamber, teaching him to be weak, to be separate, to reject the very compromises that keep kingdoms standing. I've taught him truth, AZUBAH says, her voice breaking. I've taught him that some things matter more than power, that faithfulness to God is worth the cost. And what has your faithfulness cost? Jehoshaphat demands. You've been forgotten, ignored. You have no influence, no allies, no voice in this palace. Is that what you want for Jehoram? A life of purity and irrelevance? The words hit like physical blows. AZUBAH stares at him, at this man she married. This king she once believed would change everything. And she sees it now. The slow erosion of conviction, the careful recalibration of what matters, the drift from Yahweh alone to Yahweh. And also I want, she says quietly, for my son to stand before God with a clean conscience, even if he stands there alone. Jehoshaphat looks at her for a long moment. Something like pity crosses his face, or maybe just weariness. The marriage will happen. AZUBAH, Jerem is not yours alone. He's mine. He's Judah's, and he will do his duty. The door closes. AZUBAH stands in the empty corridor, trembling, not from fear anymore, from rage, from grief, from the sudden terrible understanding that she's fighting not just the palace, not just foreign gods, but her own husband's compromise. She walks back to her chamber in a daze. When she gets there, Jerem is waiting. He's heard the news, heard the whispers, and he looks at her with those dark eyes that still somehow trust her. Mother, is it true she can't lie to him? Has never lied to him? Yes. I don't want to marry her, he whispers. I know. Can't you stop it? And here is the moment. The moment every mother dreads, when her child looks to her for protection she cannot provide. No. AZUBAH says, I can't. Jerem's face crumples. He's 12, but suddenly he looks much younger. Then what was the point? All the lessons, all the prayers, all the times you said God would protect us if we were faithful. What was the point if he's just going to let this happen? AZUBAH sinks onto her bed. Her scroll, the one she's been writing for years, sits on the table. All those words, all those promises. She picks it up, unrolls it, finds a passage she wrote when Jerem was still an infant. Faith is not controlling outcomes. It is planting seeds in soil you may never see bloom. It is trusting that the Lord's harvest comes in his time, not ours. She stares at the words, her own words, written in a moment of conviction that feels very far away now. Mother, Jerem's voice is small. She looks up, takes a breath. The point, she says slowly, is that you will know truth, even when you can't live it perfectly, even when the world forces you into situations you didn't choose. You will know, and knowing is a seed. It grows slowly, sometimes in the dark, but it grows. I don't understand. You will, she says someday, but she's not sure she believes it. The wedding preparations consume the palace. Aliyah arrives with an entourage that fills an entire wing. Phoenician servants, foreign priests, musicians who play instruments AZUBAH has never seen. The air fills with incense that smells wrong, sweet, cloying, nothing like the temple's frankincense. Oba catches glimpses of her sometimes. This woman who will shape her son's future. Athaliah moves through the palace like she already owns it. Head high, voice carrying, she's brilliant. AZUBAH realizes with sinking dread, intelligent, strategic, exactly the kind of woman who could reshape a kingdom. One afternoon, AZUBAH does something reckless. He requests an audience with Athaliah. The request itself is scandalous. The forgotten wife approaching the celebrated bride, but to everyone's surprise, Athaliah agrees. They meet in one of the palace gardens. Athaliah sits on a carved bench, surrounded by flowering bushes that were planted especially for her arrival. She's even more striking up close. Sharp cheekbones, eyes that miss nothing, a smile that never reaches those eyes. The mysterious AZUBAH, Athaliah says, I've heard so much about you. Nothing good, I imagine. On the contrary, they say you're stubborn, principled, unreasonable. Aliyah's smile sharpens. I respect that. Most people in palaces are neither principled nor stubborn. They're just afraid. AZUBAH sits uninvited. Her hands shake, but she clasps them in her lap. I came to ask something of you. How intriguing. I know I cannot stop this marriage. I know my son will be your husband and you will shape his future far more than I ever could. The words taste like ash. But I ask one thing, just one. Atalia tilts her head, curious. Go on, let him remember mercy. Let him remember that there is a God who sees the weak, the forgotten, the ones without power. Don't let him become. She searches for words. Don't let him forget compassion. For a moment, Alia just looks at her, then she laughs. A real laugh, surprised and almost genuine. You want me to preserve his softness. His mother taught piety. I want you to let him keep his soul. The laughter dies. Athelia leans forward and now her voice is cold steel. Listen to me, old woman. Your son will be king, not a priest, not a prophet, a king. And kings who worry about mercy, about compassion, about forgotten nobodies, those kings get overthrown or worse, they get irrelevant. Better irrelevant than damned. You actually believe that? Athelia shakes her head, something like wonder in her voice. You actually think you're invisible? God cares more about purity than power. I know he does. Then you're a fool. Alia stands. Jerem will learn what he needs to know, how to rule, how to survive, how to be feared and respected. Whether he remembers his mother's bedtime prayers. She shrugs. That's up to him. She walks away, servants falling into step behind her. AZUBAH sits alone in the garden, surrounded by foreign flowers. And finally, she cries. Not quietly, not with dignity. She sobs until her throat is raw, until her chest aches, until there's nothing left. A servant finds her there as the sun sets, helps her back to her chamber, asks if she needs anything. No, Oba whispers. There's nothing anyone can do. The wedding happens on a bright, cloudless day. The entire city celebrates, and AZUBAH is permitted to attend barely. She stands at the very back of the temple court, veiled, silent, while her son marries Jezebel's daughter. The ceremony is a careful blend of Hebrew tradition and Phoenician custom. Compromises everywhere. 2 sets of priests, 2 sets of blessings. The crowd seems pleased. Look how diplomatic, how wise, how modern. AZUBAH watches Jerem's face throughout. He looks carved from stone, speaks his vows in a monotone. When the priest pronounces them married, he doesn't smile. Athelia does, triumphant, radiant. That night, alone in her chamber, AZUBAH returns to her scroll. She's been writing it for 12 years now, teaching, recording, hoping. She reads through it one more time. Those promises, all those prayers, all those warnings about what would happen if Judah forgot the covenant. And then she adds one final line, her hand shaking so hard the letters barely form. Lord, I have planted what I could. The harvest is yours. But please, please, let my influence be a thorn in the flesh of evil. Let my words be a splinter that fierce. Let something of what I've taught remain even when I'm forgotten. Especially when I'm forgotten. She rolls up the scroll, ties it with a cord, tucks it into a hidden compartment in her chamber wall, just in case. Just in case, someday, somehow, someone needs to remember that truth was spoken here, that faith was taught here. That one woman refused to bow even when it cost her everything. Outside, the palace celebrates late into the night. Music, dancing, laughter. Inside, Orba kneels on cold stone and whispers a prayer that sounds more like a battle cry. I am forsaken, but I am not defeated. Not yet. The years after the wedding are a slow erosion. Jerem changes, not all at once. There's no single moment when AZUBAH can point and say, that's when I lost him. It happens gradually, like a river wearing a waystone. A missed visit, a cancelled lesson, an excuse delivered by a servant. The prince is occupied with his wife's family. Perhaps next week. Next week becomes next month. Next month becomes silence. And AZUBAH sees him sometimes in the corridors, always surrounded by Athelia's people, Phoenician advisors, foreign merchants, priests in robes that shimmer with colors the temple would never allow. He looks older, harder. His eyes slide past her when they cross paths, as if she's just another servant, just another piece of palace furniture. She tells herself he's protecting her, that acknowledging her would make things worse, that a failure is watching, controlling, shaping, but deep down, she knows the truth. He's choosing this bit by bit, decision by decision. He's choosing power over principle. His father's path, the easy compromise. 4 years into the marriage, Jehoshaphat dies. The funeral is magnificent. The entire nation mourns. Prophets praise his reforms, his justice, his faithfulness to the covenant. They conveniently forget the alliances with Ahab, the compromises, the slow drift toward accommodating what should have been rejected. AZUBAH stands at the burial veiled and invisible and feels nothing. No grief, no relief. Just a hollow recognition that the man she married disappeared long before his body did. Jaham is crowned king 3 weeks later. The coronation happens in the temple as tradition demands. The high priest anoints him with oil. The people cheer, trumpets sound, and on the throne beside him, in a seat that was added specially for the occasion, sits Alia, not behind him, not below him, beside him. Equal AZUBAH watches from the farthest corner of the court. She's barely visible behind a column, but she can see everything. The golden crown on Jerem's head, the purple robe, the scepter in his hand, and Ophelia leaning close, whispering in his ear throughout the entire ceremony. When it ends, when the crowd disperses, AZUBAH waits, hopes. Surely now that he's king, he'll acknowledge her, seek her counsel, remember who taught him to pray. But he doesn't. He walks past her column without a glance, Ophelia's hand on his arm, courtiers streaming behind them like a river of silk and ambition. AZUBAH stands alone in the emptying temple court until a priest, young, uncomfortable, approaches and quietly asks her to leave. Dear, the court is closing for the evening, my lady. She goes. 3 days later, the executions begin. AZUBAH hears about it from servants who whisper in horrified tones. Jerem has ordered the deaths of his brothers, all of them, Jehoshaphat's other sons, the princes who could challenge his claim. They're executed in a single night, quickly, efficiently. No trial, no mercy. The palace is silent the next morning, a terrified, suffocating silence. AZUBAH locks herself in her chamber and doesn't come out for 2 days. She can't eat, can't sleep, just kneels on the floor staring at nothing while a single question echoes in her mind. What happened to my son? The boy who listened to stories, who asked questions about God's character, who once told her he wanted to be a king who protected the weak. That boy is gone. In his place sits a man who murders his own brothers to secure a throne. On the 3rd day, there's a knock at her door. She doesn't answer, doesn't move. The knock comes again. Then a voice, low, urgent, familiar. Mother, please. I know you're in there, Joram. She should leave the door barred, should refuse him, but her hands move before her mind catches up. Sliding back the bolt, he stands in the corridor alone. No guards, no attendants. He looks terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, his robes disheveled. He's 24 years old and looks 50. May I come in? She steps aside. He enters, and she closes the door behind him. They stand in silence. The small chamber feels even smaller with him in it. This king, this stranger, this son, you've heard, he says finally. The whole city has heard. They were plotting against me. Ophelia discovered it. If I hadn't acted, don't. AZUBAH's voice is flat. Don't insult me with excuses. Were they plotting? Maybe, probably. But you didn't have to kill them all. You could have imprisoned them, exiled them. You chose slaughter because it was simpler, cleaner, because Ophelia told you that's what kings do. Jerem's jaw tightens. You don't understand the pressures. I understand perfectly. She moves to the table where her old scroll lies partially unrolled. I understand that I spent 12 years teaching you that power without righteousness is tyranny. That the Lord judges kings by how they treat the vulnerable, the weak, the ones who can't fight back. Your brothers were defenseless. You killed them anyway. They were threats. They were your family. So is Ophelia. His voice rises. She's my wife, my queen. She's given me counsel that's kept me alive, kept this kingdom stable. At what cost? AZUBAH turns on him. Look at yourself. For years married to her, and you've become everything I prayed you wouldn't be. Cruel, calculating, willing to sacrifice anything, anyone for power. I'm willing to do what's necessary, Jerem shouts. Unlike you, unlike father who spent so much time trying to be righteous that he let Israel manipulate him, let foreign powers dictate terms, let the kingdom weaken while he worried about purity. Your father compromised, AZUBAH says quietly. Yeah, it destroyed him. Now you're following the same path, only faster. At least Jehoshaphat felt guilty about his alliances. You glory in yours. Jerem stares at her. His hands clench and unclench at his sides. I came here, he says, voice shaking, because I thought I hoped you might understand, that you might see. I'm trying to hold this kingdom together in impossible circumstances. You came here for absolution. I can't give you. I came because you're my mother. Then act like my son. AZUBAH steps closer. Repent, turn back. You've done terrible things, but the Lord is merciful. There's still time. Time for what? To become weak, irrelevant. To be the king who cared more about his mother's religious fantasies than his kingdom's survival. The words hang in the air like poison. AZUBAH feels something break inside her. Some final tether of hope she didn't know she was still holding. Get out, she whispers. Mother, get out. He stares at her for a long moment, then turns and leaves without another word. The door closes and AZUBAH sinks onto her bed and sits in the silence that follows, and she realizes with perfect terrible clarity she has lost him completely. Not to death, not to distance, to choice. Her son has chosen Ophelia's path over hers. Power over principle, the throne over truth. and there's nothing she can do about it. The next morning, palace stewards arrive with new orders. AZUBAH is being relocated again. This time to the poorest wing of the palace. Rooms that once housed servants, now barely used. The message is clear. The king's mother is an embarrassment, a relic, best tucked away where visiting dignitaries won't stumble across her. She's given 1 hour to pack her belongings. The new chamber is tiny. A single room with a narrow bed, a table, 1 chair and a window, so small it barely admits light. The walls are water-stained. The floor is uneven. There's no proper lamp, just a crude oil dish that smokes when it burns. This is where queens go to be forgotten. AZUBAH sets down her single bag of possessions, looks around this space that's somehow even smaller than the last, and something in her rebels know, she will not disappear quietly. She will not fade into convenient invisibility. If she can't reach Jerem, she'll reach what comes after him. That night, by the light of her smoking lamp, she begins writing again. Not a continuation of her old scroll that's finished, sealed, hidden. This is something new, a record, a testimony, a witness to what's happening in Judah's palace. While everyone pretends not to see, she writes about Jerem's murders, about Athaliah's influence, about the slow creep of Baal worship into the court, the priests who've been quietly installed, the shrines that appear in nobles' homes, the way the queen speaks of the gods, plural, and no one corrects her. She writes about compromise, how it starts with small allowances, a foreign wife for political gain, a single idol for diplomatic courtesy, how it grows, expands, metastasizes until truth itself becomes negotiable. This is what happens, she writes, when kings forget that the Lord demands exclusive worship, not primary worship, not respectful worship alongside other options. Exclusive, total, undivided. She writes until her hand cramps, until the lamp burns low, until dawn creeps through her tiny window, and she prays no longer for Jerem, not anymore, but for whoever comes next, for the grandson she's never met, for the future she can't see. Lord, she whispers, I have failed. My son is lost, but please don't let my failure be the end. Let something survive. Let truth outlast compromise. Let faithfulness outlive power. Months pass. A year. AZUBAH exists in her tiny chamber like a ghost. Servants bring food. She eats alone. No one visits. No invitations come. She hears news from the palace only in fragments whispered by the youngest servants who still remember she was once someone worth speaking to. Jerem's reign grows more brutal, more erratic. He makes alliances that benefit Phoenicia more than Judah. He allows Baal altars in Jerusalem, not openly, not officially, but everyone knows they're there. The prophets who protest mysteriously disappear or fall silent. Athaliah rules beside him. Some whisper, not advising, ruling. And then one afternoon, a young servant girl appears at AZUBAH's door. She can't be more than 15, eyes wide and frightened. My lady, she whispers, glancing over her shoulder. The queen, she has a son, Princess Haya, born 3 days ago. AZUBAH's breath catches, a grandson, Jerem's heir. And she asks, because the girl clearly has more to say, but the queen says. The girl swallows hard. She says you are not to meet him ever. She's ordered the servants. Anyone who brings the child near you will be dismissed permanently. AZUBAH closes her eyes. Of course a failure would do this. Cut off any possibility of AZUBAH's influence reaching another generation. Thank you for telling me, she says quietly. The girl lingers. I'm sorry, my lady. It's not right. Very little is right anymore. After the girl leaves, Oba sits at her small table and stares at the wall. She has a grandson, a baby boy who will grow up never knowing her, never hearing the stories, never learning that there's another way to be king besides the one his parents will teach him. She thinks about trying to reach him somehow, bribing servants, sneaking through corridors, making one desperate attempt to know. She learned with Jerem, you can't force faithfulness, can't manipulate someone into righteousness. All you can do is plant seeds, and trust that God knows how to grow things in impossible soil. So instead of scheming, she writes a letter to a grandson she'll never meet, tells him about his heritage, about David, about Solomon's wisdom and his failure, about the covenant, about the God who sees forsaken grandmothers and forgotten princes. You may never read this, she writes. Your mother will burn it if she finds it, your father won't care, but I'm writing it anyway because someone needs to remember the truth was spoken in this palace, that not everyone bowed, that your grandmother loved the Lord more than she loved comfort, approval, or her own safety. She seals the letter, tucks it away with her other scroll. Seeds. She's planting seeds, and she has no idea if they'll ever bloom. Jehoshaphat's worst fears come true slowly, then all at once. Joram rules for 8 years, and they are years of blood and decay. The prophets who warned against alliances with Ahab's house are proven right, but there's no satisfaction in it, only watching helplessly as Judah slides toward judgment. Edom revolts. Then Libnah, the territories Jehoshaphat secured through careful diplomacy and faith, crumble under Joram's brutal pragmatism. The king responds with violence, which only breeds more violence. The kingdom that once sang praises in the streets now whispers curses in the shadows. AZUBAH hears all of this from her tiny chamber. Servants bring fragments of news with her daily bread. A battle lost here, a rebellion there, the king's growing paranoia, the queen's expanding influence, and then comes the sickness. At first, it's just rumor. The king has stomach pains, nothing serious. He's still appearing at court, still issuing decrees. But the rumors persist, grow darker. The pains are getting worse. The physicians can't help. He's losing weight, strength, color. AZUBAH learns the truth from an old priest who remembers her father, who still believes she deserves to know what's happening to her son. It's a disease of the bowels, he says quietly, standing in her doorway late one night. Incurable. The chronicles will record it as judgment, the Lord striking him for his sins. It will take 2 years, maybe more, and it will be, he pauses, agonizing. 2 years, AZUBAH repeats numbly. The queen has already begun positioning herself, making alliances, securing power for Prince Ahaz. She knows what's coming. After he leaves, AZUBAH sits in the dark and tries to feel something. Grief, pity, even satisfaction that her warnings prove true. She feels nothing, just a vast, empty exhaustion. Her son is dying, and she can't even mourn him properly because the boy she loved died years ago, replaced by this stranger who murdered his brothers and married Judah to Bol. The sickness worsens. Joram stops appearing in public. The palace fills with a smell of incense meant to cover other smells. Sickness, rot, death approaching on slow feet. AZUBAH is moved again. This time it's not even presented as a relocation. Guards simply appear one morning and escort her to what amounts to a cell. It's in the oldest part of the palace, a section that's barely maintained. The room is cold, dark, more dungeon than chamber. There's a thin pallet on the floor, a bucket, a tiny window with iron bars. Queen Athaliah's orders, one guard says, not meeting her eyes. For your own safety. My safety, from what? He doesn't answer, just closes the door. She hears a bolt slide into place. She's a prisoner now. The forgotten queen has become the imprisoned queen. Days blur together. Food appears once daily, shoved through a slot in the door. The guards never speak. No one visits. The only light comes from that barred window high up, barely larger than her hand. AZUBAH loses track of time. A week, 2 weeks, a month. The darkness makes everything uncertain. She has nothing, no scrolls. Those were left behind in the last move. No lamp, too dangerous, they said. No possessions except the clothes she was wearing when they brought her here. Just stone, darkness, silence. She prays at first the psalms she memorized as a child, the prayers her father taught her. But as days pass, even prayer becomes difficult. The words feel like stones in her mouth, heavy and dead. One night, or maybe it's day, she can't tell anymore. She hears footsteps outside her door. The bolt slides back. She squints against sudden torchlight. A figure enters, gaunt, stooped, moving with obvious pain. Joram, she barely recognizes him. He's lost so much weight. His royal robes hang like burial cloths. His skin is gray, his eyes sunken. He leans heavily on a walking stick, and even that seems almost too much for him. He kneels slowly, painfully, at the door of her cell. Mother, his voice is a whisper, a ghost of the strong young king who shouted at her 4 years ago. AZUBAH crawls to the bars. Her hands shake as she reaches through, and their fingers touch his cold, hers, trembling. "What are you doing here?" she asks. "I had to see you." Each word seems to cost him. "I had to before." He doesn't finish. "Doesn't need to, your harem. I've done terrible things." The words come in a rush now, like poison being purged. The murders, the alliances, the altars I allowed, the prophets, the first silenced. I told myself it was necessary, that I was being strong. But his breath rattles. I read your words every night. Even when I did those things, even when I became what you warned me against, I couldn't stop reading them. AZUBAH's throat constricts. "What words?" "The scroll, the one you wrote for me. I've kept it hidden all these years. A failure doesn't know. No one knows." He pulls something from inside his robe. A small worn scroll tied with faded cord. "I read it when she's asleep, when the pain keeps me awake, when I remember what I've become." Tears stream down Oba's face. "Then why did you—" "I tried to be what they wanted," Joram says, and now he's crying too. Father wanted peace through alliances. Athaliah wanted power through strength. The court wanted stability at any cost. I thought if I could just balance it all, be strong enough, smart enough. He shakes his head. But I could never silence your voice. It stayed like a splinter, like something lodged in my chest that I couldn't remove. He coughs, wet, painful, when he pulls his hand away. There's blood on his palm. I have a son, he continues, Ahaziah. He's 6 years old now, smart, curious. Athalia is already shaping him, teaching him her ways, the Phoenician gods, the politics of power. And his voice breaks. I can't stop her. I'm dying, and when I'm gone, she'll have total control. She'll erase everything you taught me, everything true. Then you must act, AZUBAH says urgently, gripping his hands tighter. While you still can, one last act, give him the scroll. Find someone you trust, a priest, a servant, anyone, and make sure Ahaziah receives it. Athalia will destroy it if she finds it. Then hide it, protect it, make it survive. AZUBAH pulls him closer to the bars. You failed, Jerem. You chose wrong again and again, but you can still do this. Plant one seed, leave one testimony. Don't let everything I taught you die with you. Jerem stares at her, then nods a small, painful movement. I'll try. Swear it on the God we both know is real, even when we've failed him. Swear you'll protect that scroll. I swear. He pulls back, tucks the scroll carefully back into his robes. Mother, I'm sorry for everything, for the brothers, for the silence, for letting Athalia. I know. Her voice is gentle now. I know. He struggles to stand. The effort leaves him shaking, gasping. He looks at her one last time. This son she bore, taught, lost, and is losing again. Will God forgive me? He asks. If you truly repent, yes, he forgives the worst of us. But Jerem, she holds his gaze. Forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. What you've set in motion will continue. Athalia, Ahaziah, the altars, the compromises, they'll outlive you. Then what's the point? The point is that somewhere, somehow, truth survives. The scroll survives. God's mercy survives. And maybe, just maybe, one of your descendants will read those words and turn back. Jerem nods, wipes his eyes with a trembling hand. Then he's gone. The door closes. The bolt slides home. AZUBAH collapses on the cell floor, pressing her hands over her mouth to stifle the sobs. She weeps until there's nothing left, until her body is empty of everything but exhaustion. Then she lies on the cold stone and stares at the darkness and whispers into the void. Lord, if I never see the fruit, let it be enough that I planted. Let the scroll survive. Let truth outlast lies. Let mercy be stronger than judgment. Please. No answer comes, just silence. The same silence that's been her companion for years now. 3 days pass. Or maybe it's 4. Time has no meaning in the cell. Then the bolt slides back again. But this time it's not Jerem, it's a steward, young, official looking. He opens the door but doesn't enter. You're being released, he says. AZUBAH sits up slowly, blinking in the torchlight. Why? The king is dead. Queen Athalia has ordered all prisoners freed as an act of mercy. The word sounds hollow in his mouth. She stands on shaking legs, follows him out into corridors she barely recognizes. The palace is draped in mourning cloths. Servants rush past with funeral preparations. No one looks at her. The steward leads her back to her previous chamber, the tiny one, not the cell. Her few possessions are still there, untouched. You're to remain here, he says. Queen Mother Athalia's orders. You're not to leave these rooms. You're not to contact Prince Ahaziah. You're not to interfere with court matters. Is that clear? Perfectly. He leaves. The door closes, but this time there's no bolt, just silence. Oba sinks onto her bed and realizes Jerem is dead. Her son is gone. The boy who listened to stories, who carried her scroll in secret, who came to her cell weeping, he's gone. She should feel something, but she's too empty, too worn. She lies down and sleeps for what feels like days. When she wakes, there's something on her table that wasn't there before. A small package wrapped in cloth. Her hands shake as she unwraps it. Inside is her original scroll, the one she wrote for Jerem. But now in the margins in Jerem's shaking handwriting are new words for my son Ahaziah. From his grandmother AZUBAH, who taught me that God sees the forsaken. May you read this when the palace's voices grow too loud. May you remember there is another way. Your father who failed but tried to leave you truth. Jerem, king of Judah, beneath it, sealed with wax, is a note. The priest Jehoiada has been entrusted with a copy. He will guard your grandson when I cannot. AZUBAH's breath catches. He did it. In his final days, dying in agony, Jerem kept his word. He passed the scroll on, he protected it. She clutches it to her chest and weeps. Not from grief now, but from something she hasn't felt in years. Hope, faint, fragile, barely there, but real. The scroll survived. Truth survived. And somewhere in this palace there's a priest who knows, who's watching, who's waiting. AZUBAH rolls the scroll carefully and tucks it back into its hiding place. She's still a prisoner in these tiny rooms, still forgotten, still powerless. But she's not finished, not yet. The disease takes Jerem exactly as the priest predicted. Slowly, brutally, over to agonizing years. When he finally dies, Judah barely mourns. The chronicler's record is devastating. He passed away, to no one's regret. No one's regret, not even his mother's. AZUBAH stands at her tiny window and watches the funeral procession from a distance. A modest affair, no honor guard, no crowds weeping in the streets, just duty being performed because kings, even failed ones, must be buried. Athalia walks behind the bier, veiled in black, her son Uzziah beside her. The boy is 8 now, tall for his age, moving with his mother's confident stride. Even from here, AZUBAH can see Athalia's hand on his shoulder, guiding, controlling, shaping. The scroll sits hidden in AZUBAH's chamber. Jerem kept his word. But what good is a hidden scroll if the child it's meant for never sees it? Uzziah is crowned king within the week. He's 22 years old, which means he's been under Athia's complete control since birth. The coronation is lavish, far grander than Jerem's. Phoenician musicians, foreign dignitaries, priests from temples AZUBAH doesn't even want to name, and Athalia standing beside the throne, not behind it, beside it. The message is clear. A new king sits on Judah's throne, but the old queen still rules. AZUBAH is not invited to the coronation, not even mentioned. She is a ghost now, existing only in the palace's forgotten corners. But ghosts can still watch, still pray, still wait. 2 years into our reign, catastrophe strikes. Word comes from the northern kingdom. King Joram of Israel has been killed, not in battle, assassinated by one of his own commanders, a man named Jew, who claims to be fulfilling prophecy, cleansing Israel of Baal worship, and he's coming south. The palace erupts in panic. Uzziah was allied with Joram, they fought together, made pacts together. Now, Israel's new king is a zealot with an army and a divine mandate to destroy Ahab's entire line, which includes Athalia. AZUBAH learns all this from a terrified servant girl who brings her daily bread. The girl can barely speak. She's shaking so hard they say Jew killed Queen Jezebel herself. She whispers, threw her from a window. The dogs ate her body in the street. AZUBAH closes her eyes. Jezebel, the woman who slaughtered prophets, who turned Israel to Baal, who made wickedness a dynasty, dead, eaten by dogs, just as Elijah prophesied. What about King Ahaziah? AZUBAH asks. He's fled to Samaria, but Gu's forces are hunting him. They're killing everyone connected to Ahab's house. Everyone. The girl leaves. AZUBAH sits in the silence that follows. This is it. The judgment her father warned about, the consequences Jerem set in motion. The harvest of seeds planted in compromise and watered with innocent blood. 3 days later, more news. Uzziah is dead. Killed by Jews' men. His body brought back to Jerusalem for burial. Oba thinks she should feel something. Grief for a grandson she never met. Horror at the violence. Fear for what comes next. Instead, she feels only a terrible cold clarity. Athalia has lost her son, lost her power base, lost everything. And a woman like Athalia doesn't lose gracefully. The massacre happened so quickly that most of Jerusalem doesn't realize what's occurring until it's over. Alea seizes the throne. Not as regent, not as queen, mother, as monarch, the first and only woman to rule Judah in her own right, and her first act is to eliminate all threats to her power. Every male heir in the royal line, every grandson, every great-grandson, anyone who could claim David's throne. The palace runs red. AZUBAH hears the screams from her chamber, children's voices, women wailing, the heavy footfall of soldiers moving through corridors, kicking down doors. She presses herself against the wall, hardly breathing. Surely they'll come for her, too. Surely Athalia won't leave any loose ends. But no one comes because she's already been erased, already forgotten, so thoroughly invisible that even in a purge she's overlooked. The screaming stops. The palace falls silent. The silence of held breath, of terror, of blood soaking into stone. AZUBAH doesn't move from her corner for hours. Just sits there, knees pulled to her chest, listening to the awful quiet. When she finally stands, walks to her tiny window. Jerusalem below is unchanged. Merchants in the market, farmers bringing produce, life continuing while children's bodies cool in the palace. She's numb, beyond grief, beyond horror. She exists in some space beyond emotion where the mind simply stops processing because the alternative is madness. A week passes, then 2. The palace adjusts to its new reality. Queen Athalia, no king, just the queen. And then a whisper. It starts so quietly AZUBAH almost misses it. A servant mentions in passing that the high priest's wife was seen carrying something into the temple, something small, wrapped in blankets, and probably just offering, the servant says. But strange the way she moved, like she was hiding something. AZUBAH's heart stops. Jehoiada, the priest Jehoiada mentioned, the one entrusted with the scroll, could he have? She wants to ask, wants to demand more information, but she's learned caution, learned that the forgotten survive by staying forgotten, so she says nothing, just files the whisper away. More months pass, a year. Athalia consolidates power. She doesn't just permit Baal worship, she mandates it. A temple to Baal is built in Jerusalem itself. Across from the Lord's temple, priests who protest disappear. The faithful go underground. Judah has become what Israel was under Jezebel, and AZUBAH sits in her tiny chamber, aging, weakening, watching everything she fought for crumble to dust. She's 70 years old now. Her hair is white, her hands shake, the cold seeps into her bones and never leaves. She wakes each morning surprised she's still alive, that her heart still beats, that breath still comes. Why does she persist? What's the point? The scroll sits hidden in the wall, unread, useless. Jerem's final act of faithfulness, locked away where it can't reach anyone. One night, AZUBAH pulls it out, unrolls it by lamplight, reads her own words from decades ago. Words written for a baby who became a murderer, for a king who died unloved, for a faith that seems to have died with him. Faith is planting seeds in soil you may never see bloom. She reads aloud. The words mock her now. She planted, she tended, she watered with tears and blood and decades of isolation, and the garden burned. Anyway, she rolls up the scroll, holds it in her trembling hands, and for the first time in her life, she considers destroying it. What's the point of preserving words no one will read? What's the point of testimony when everyone who might listen is dead? Her hand moves toward the lamp. One quick motion, the parchment would burn in seconds. Everything she wrote, everything she hoped, gone, but she can't do it. Even now, even in the darkness, even after everything, she can't destroy it. Because deep down beneath the numbness and despair, there's still something. Not hope exactly. Hope would be too strong a word, but stubbornness, defiance, the same impulse that made her refuse the Asher amulet all those years ago. No, she whispers to the empty room. You don't get to erase this. You don't get to erase me. She tucks the scroll back into its hiding place, and then because she's too tired to do anything else, she prays, not eloquently, not with faith, just speaks. Lord, I don't understand your plan. I don't see your purpose. I've done everything I knew to do, and it's all come to nothing. My son died in agony. My grandson was murdered. My great-grandsons were slaughtered. The kingdom worships Baal, and I'm still here, old and useless and forgotten. Why am I still here? What possible purpose could you have for keeping me alive? No answer comes, just the lamp's flicker. The night sounds through her barred window, but then footsteps in the corridor. She tenses. It's late. No servant should be moving at this hour. A soft knock at her door. Who is it? Her voice cracks from disuse. A friend, a woman's voice, unfamiliar. AZUBAH opens the door. A crack. Outside stands a woman she's never seen before, middle-aged, dressed simply with kind eyes and a nervous manner. Forgive the intrusion, my lady. I am Jehoshua, wife to the priest. Jehoiada Orba's breath catches. Jehoiada, may I enter quickly, please? We mustn't be seen. AZUBAH steps aside. Jehoshua slips in, and the door closes. For a moment, they just look at each other. Then Jehoshua speaks, a voice barely above a whisper. My husband has something. Someone hidden in the temple. A child. The only survivor of Alia's massacre. AZUBAH grips the table for support. Who? Your great-grandson, Joash. He was 1 year old when the killing began. I grabbed him from his nurse's arms while the soldiers were still down the corridor, hid him under my cloak. My husband has kept him safe in the temple chambers for 6 years now. No one knows, not even the other priests. 6 years the child has been living in the temple, hidden, for 6 years. Why are you telling me this? AZUBAH asks. Because he's 7 now, old enough to start asking questions, old enough to need more than just hiding. He needs teaching, truth, heritage, the things Jehoshua's eyes are wet, the things his great-grandmother wrote in a scroll my husband has guarded all this time. AZUBAH's knees buckle, she sinks onto her bed. You have the scroll. We have it, and we've used it to teach Joash what we could. But Jehoshua kneels in front of her. We can't bring you to the temple, too dangerous. And we can't bring him here. If Alia discovered him, she'd kill us all. But I needed you to know your words have not died. They're living in a child who's being raised to retake David's throne. AZUBAH can't speak, can't breathe. Everything she thought was lost. Everything she thought was for nothing. Living in a hidden child in secret chambers beneath Athaliah's nose. Does he? Her voice breaks. Does he know about me? He knows his family was killed. He knows his great-grandgrandmother wrote words that teach him about the one true God. He knows he's being prepared for something. Though we haven't told him everything yet. He's still so young. What's he like? The question comes out desperate. Jehoshaphat smiles. The first genuine smile AZUBAH has seen in years. Curious, bright, asks constant questions about God, about justice, about why the queen worships Baal. If Yahweh is the true God, he's paused, and he's not like his father or his grandfather. There's something different in him, something pure. AZUBAH presses her hands over her mouth. Tears stream down her face. The scroll survived, she whispers. More than survived. It's thriving. Every word you wrote, Joash knows them, recites them, asks what they mean. You may never meet him, AZUBAH, but you're shaping him. Every day after Jehoshaphat leaves, slipping out as quietly as she came, AZUBAH sits in the darkness and lets herself feel something she hasn't felt in decades. Not hope, not yet, but possibility. The seed didn't die. It went underground, and in the darkness, hidden from Athaliah's rage, from the palace's corruption, from the nation's apostasy, it's growing. 6 more years pass. AZUBAH ages, her body fails in small ways. Joints that don't bend, eyes that blur, breath that comes harder. She's 76 now, ancient by any measure. Most mornings she wakes surprised to find herself still alive. Jehoshaphat visits when she can, always at night, always briefly. She brings news of Joash. The boy is 13 now, strong, faithful, growing into something remarkable. He asks about you. Jehoshaphat says during one visit, he knows the scroll came from someone who loved God more than safety. He calls you the hidden grandmother. AZUBAH smiles at that. Hidden, yes, but not erased. How much longer, she asks. Jehoshaphat knows what she means. How much longer can they hide a teenage boy in the temple? How much longer before someone discovers him? How much longer before Athaliah's reign must be challenged? Soon, Jehoshaphat says, my husband is gathering support. Quietly. The palace guard commanders who still remember David's covenant. The priests who've kept faith underground. When Joash turns 14, she pauses. That's the age of kingship. The age David was anointed. 1 more year. Oba nods. She understands she might not live to see it. Her body is giving out, she can feel it. The way breath comes shallow. The way her heart stumbles. The way exhaustion never fully lifts. But she's held on this long. Perhaps that night after Jehoshaphat leaves, Oba pulls out her scroll one final time. She adds a single line in shaking script. To Joash, my great-grandson whom I will never meet, you are proof that God keeps promises, that seeds planted in darkness bloom in his time, that the forsaken are not forgotten. Rule with justice, love mercy, walk humbly, and remember your great-grandmother believed in you before you were born. She rolls it up, gives it to Jehoshaphat the next time she visits for him. When the time comes, winter arrives. The coldest AZUBAH can remember. Her tiny chamber becomes an icebox. The palace provides no extra blankets, no brazier. Why waste resources on someone so close to death? She spends most days in bed now, too weak to stand for long. A young servant brings food she barely eats. The girl is kind, reads scripture to her sometimes, though suspects the girl can't fully understand what she's reading. On a day when snow falls over Jerusalem, rare, beautiful, terrible, Jehoshaphat arrives with news that makes Abba's failing heartbeat stronger. It's happening tomorrow. The commanders have sworn loyalty. The Levites are positioned. At dawn, we reveal Joash and crown him king. Oba struggles to sit up. Tomorrow my husband asks for your prayers. It's dangerous. If even one commander betrays us, if word reaches Athaliah before we're ready, Jehoshaphat doesn't finish. They both know what will happen. I'll pray, AZUBAH says. Or not. I promise. Jehoshaphat embraces her gently because AZUBAH feels fragile as parchment. You should know, when we crown him, when we proclaim him king, we'll tell the story, your story, how a forgotten queen planted words that grew a righteous king. No, AZUBAH shakes her head. Tell Joash's story. Tell God's story. I'm just the pot that held the seed. After Jehoshaphat leaves, AZUBAH does exactly what she promised. She prays not eloquently, not with the beautiful phrases she once knew. Her mind wanders, her words tangle, but she prays, Lord, protect the boy, protect Jehoiada, protect the commanders who risk everything tomorrow. Let this seed bloom, please, after all these years, after all this darkness. Let there be light. She prays through the night. When dawn comes, she's too weak to rise from her bed, but she can hear distant sounds, trumpets, shouting, not the angry shouts of battle, but celebration. Is that celebration? Footsteps running through corridors, guards yelling, and then a woman's scream. Rage and terror combined. A failure. More shouts. Long live King Joash. Long live the king. It's done. Joash has been crowned, proclaimed, revealed. AZUBAH lies in her bed, tears streaming into her white hair, and laughs. Actually laughs. The sound startles her. It's been so long since she made that sound. Hours pass. The palace erupts in chaos. She hears fragments. A failure arrested, a failure executed, the Bell Temple destroyed, the Covenant renewed, a kingdom turning. As afternoon light slants through her tiny window, there are footsteps again, but different this time, purposeful, multiple people. Her door opens. Jehoiada enters first. Behind him, flanked by guards and priests, is a boy. No, a young king, crowned, robed, barely 14, but carrying himself with a gravity that makes him seem older. Joash AZUBAH tries to sit up, can't. Jehoiada helps her, propping her against the wall with surprising gentleness. The young king approaches her bed, kneels beside it. Great-grandmother, he says. His voice hasn't fully deepened yet. Still has the edges of boyhood, but his eyes are old. Knowing they told me I couldn't meet you, that it was too dangerous, but I'm king now, and my first decree is that I will meet the woman who saved my life before I was born. AZUBAH reaches out with shaking hands, touches his face, his hair, making sure he's real. You look like him, she whispers. Your grandfather, but your eyes are different. They say, I have your eyes. She smiles. Then you'll see clearly, even when the palace tries to blind you. Joash takes her hand. They gave me your scroll. I've read it so many times, I can recite it. Every word, every prayer. You taught me about God when you didn't even know I existed. That's what faith is, AZUBAH says, to planting seeds for harvests you'll never see. But you are seeing it. You're here. You lived long enough only because God is merciful. She squeezes his hand with what little strength she has. Listen to me, Joash. You're king now. Young, surrounded by people who will try to use you, manipulate you, turn you into what they want. Your grandfather, Jerem, faced the same pressures. He chose wrong. I won't, you might. She holds his gaze. You're human, you'll be tempted. Compromises will seem reasonable. Alliances will seem necessary. But remember this, the Lord demands exclusive worship. Not primary, not respectful, exclusive. When the voices get loud, and they will read the scroll, remember where you came from. Remember what was sacrificed to put you on that throne. Joash nods, tears in his young eyes. He understands. Not fully. He's too young, but the foundation is there. They talk a while longer, then Jehoiada gently suggests the king must address his people. Joash squeezes her hand one last time. Thank you, great-grandmother, for everything. Serve him well, she whispers. That's all the thanks I need. They leave, and AZUBAH lies back, utterly spent, but utterly at peace. The seed survived, bloomed. A boy king sits on David's throne, trained in truth, armed with words she wrote in darkness decades ago. Her name means forsaken, but she wasn't. Not really. God saw her, remembered her, used her. The forgotten queen shaped a righteous king. That night, as Jerusalem celebrates, AZUBAH's breathing slows. She slips away quietly, a smile on her aged face. They bury her simply as she would have wanted. The chronicles barely mention her. Just a footnote. AZUBAH, mother of but in the temple Jehoiada preserves her scroll, and young King Joash reads it often, especially when pressure mounts and compromise whispers. In his early years, he repairs the temple, restores worship, honors the covenant, and when people ask why, he tells them about a great-grandmother he met once, a woman the palace forgot, a woman who wrote words in darkness and trusted God to make them light. Maybe you feel forgotten today, invisible to the people who matter, working faithfully in places no one sees, planting seeds that may never bloom in your lifetime. AZUBAH's story whispers a truth. The most powerful work often happens in the hidden places, in quiet prayers, in words spoken to children when no one's watching, in stands that cost everything but change eternity. God sees you. Every sacrifice, every lonely night, every moment you choose faithfulness over recognition. You are not forsaken, you are planted. Your work is simply this. Keep planting, keep believing, keep speaking truth, even when no one seems to listen, because somewhere in a child you'll never meet, in a future you can't imagine, your faithfulness is growing something beautiful. If this story touched you, subscribe, turn on the bell, and share it with someone who needs to know they're not forgotten. Because the forsaken are never truly forsaken. They're just seeds waiting to bloom.